Hello and welcome to The Other Way, a lifestyle podcast exploring uncommon, unconventional, or otherwise alternative approaches to health, spirituality, identity, work, and life. I'm your host, Kasha. I'm the founder of InFlow, a women's wellness brand that designs intentional products to help women reconnect to their unique cyclical rhythms and find a balance between being and doing. This podcast is an extension of my mission with InFlow. Here, you'll find interviews with inspiring humans, trailblazers, researchers, spiritual teachers, and more, all on the journey of doing things the other way. Now, let's dive in. Welcome to the winter-spring 2025 season of The Other Way. I am so excited to have you all here. If you are tuning in via audio, welcome. If you are watching on YouTube or Spotify, hello. I hope you feel like you're in the room and we're having a one-on-one conversation. That's the vibe that I want to have going into 2025. And I just want to say I'm so excited to be here. We have so many incredible guests coming on for this season, and it's been really wonderful taking this break. I logged off December 23rd and have not been interviewing, have not even been on social, with the exception of going online to grab an email in my DM or some information in there. I have not been on social media, deleted the app, have not been posting. And it's been really powerful. Just taking a step back from ingesting so much information, which a lot of the time I'm not really controlling what's coming in. It's just what's been programmed on my feed. And so taking some space to step away from some of that, and then B, have more discretion and choice around what it is that I'm ingesting has been really, really helpful. Truly, truly helpful. And we'll get into some of that because I am fresh off of a 7-day silent meditation retreat. And some of these reflections that I'm already sharing are some of the reflections that were further reinforced through taking some time away, really retreating and really training my meditation practice and going deeper into things at the start of 2025. Agenda for today. I want to share a bit about the solo retreat, what that was like. This was my first solo silent meditation retreat, so we'll dive into that. I want to share what are some of my takeaways, so I'll talk about the experience, what happened. Some very intense things definitely happened and have percolated since, which I would love to update you all on, especially if doing a retreat is something you're curious about. And then we'll talk a bit about the plan or some of the themes for this next season. And then stay tuned till the end because I have a very special announcement about a giveaway for my listeners. And this is a really exciting giveaway. So I think you'll really love it. So just to backtrack, as I shared at the very beginning, I logged off in December, really had a very present vacation time with my family, with Zach. We were all on the East Coast in Westchester celebrating the holidays together, my birthday, Capricorn season together. It was so special. But as I think I might have alluded to in my last solo episode, it was also really stressful. My mom has cancer. There's something about the experience of being present with family during this time that there's also this added pressure of the what ifs in life. What if this is the last time? And I said this on prior episodes, every time could be the last time. But I think when we're in the presence of illness and things like that, it can feel even more heavy and even more present. And so I think that there was just some anxiety that was carried over in that. By the end of it, I definitely was really happy to spend time with my family and be with them, but I was also really happy to come back to the West Coast, get back into my routine. And as I expected, I was feeling really stressed starting the new year. I did not feel as refreshed with as much clarity as I have in past years. Mostly, I think just the heaviness of the situation and also being with family has family dynamics, and that always comes up. And it was definitely really intense, and it was sad to leave. And there were just a lot of emotions circulating around. And so at the start of the year, I'm so happy I pre planned for this. This is like a trick that I encourage folks to think about if you're listening to this. Planting the seeds of the time that you want to take off, may it be retreat or vacation up front, and really blocking those times up front can be so powerful. I had booked a solo retreat in November or December of 2024 to go on this silent retreat to Spirit Rock, which is up here in Northern California. It's a insight meditation center. So they teach in the Theravada tradition, very non-religious, very like psychology based, very just awareness focused meditation styles. Jack Kornfield is one of the founders and teachers. Sylvia Braunstein is as well. If anyone out there is familiar with Tara Brach, that is the tradition that she teaches as well. Joseph Goldstein. So I've never been to Spirit Rock before, and I have never been on a silent meditation before. And I was really, really excited and nervous to do it. And as the date came closer, I felt even more nervous to do it. Just the anxiety of not being able to talk for a week, surrendering my phone, or at least turning it off and putting it away. And I take phone breaks all the time, like on over the weekend, I try to do that. But there was something so different about really surrendering all these external stimuli in order to go inward. And this is also at a time that I was acutely feeling that distraction. Even though I didn't have social media, I found it nearly impossible to put my phone down at times. I would constantly find myself distracted, may it be checking my email or googling something that came into my mind. I felt as though my phone became the ultimate crutch for mental thought and then just spiral off and get lost in thought. Like often I can speak from my own experience. When I meditate, I can reflect on the fact that I've been caught up in thought and then bring myself back. But when I have a phone in front of me or a device that has all this stimuli, I find myself not just like getting distracted, but satisfying that and getting further distracted and then waking up and finding that it's been half an hour and I've wasted all this time. And so this was quite a common pattern for me leading up to the retreat. And I was really nervous about just giving up the phone. Like I was scared as to what was going to come up. I had no idea what to expect. This was not a insight meditation retreat. It was a metta meditation retreat. Metta is loving kindness, which is one of the four Brahma Viharas or benevolent ways of being that can be cultivated with meditation. These are ways of being that are supportive to the individual and to the community. So, equanimity, metta is another one, sympathetic joy is another one, and then compassion. So, cultivating these qualities is something that can come as the result of meditation or something that we practice with meditation in order to find that path of freedom and real peace and just contentment in our lives and to really support the world in a way. This retreat was a metta focused retreat, although we touched on the other Brahma Viharas that I mentioned. And that's relevant because it was a very different meditation style than I have been used to in the past. So, prior to this, I practiced primarily insight meditation as well as also some Zen, Soto Zen style meditation when I would go to Green Gulch. But metta, and so insight itself is quite focused on just becoming aware of sensations in the body, following our breath, becoming aware of sounds in the room. So it's really about cultivating focus to become aware of different sensory experiences, thoughts being a sensory experience as well. But with Metta, there is a direct focus on cultivating loving kindness. So some of you might have heard the phrases, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe from inner and outer harm, may you be at ease. These are some of the common phrases that we repeat when practicing Metta, and we typically take and send that metta to a particular person. May it be somebody else, may it be ourselves, may it be all beings. And then there's a further evolved version of metta, which is to just feel into the sensation of loving kindness within our hearts and then to radiate that out to others, to have that be something that you radiate to others and you can feel radiated to you. And it's very sensory and also very ethereal. It's not something that feels as tangible as the thoughts, which can sometimes feel very dual in their presentation. So it's for this person or it's this particular saying, etc., very much in the head. But it takes a lot of focus. And the structure of the retreat is such that from about 6 in the morning, 6:15 is when the first meditation starts, until about 9:30 at night, with the exception of some breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then a little bit of free time where you're supposed to still be doing walking meditation. You are either sitting for 45-minute periods or walking, alternating between that for pretty much the whole day. So it's a lot of meditation. I remember there was one girl in one of our discussion sessions. So you got 2 discussion sessions, and then if you were lucky, you could also meet with the teacher one time. One of the women that was in a discussion session with me, she basically stated, this is an insane amount of meditation and the struggle with that. And I so resonated and was so grateful that somebody had mentioned that because it is. I have gone on retreat before where I have meditated for perhaps 4 hours a day, like a half day retreat, or maybe a full day retreat of 8 to 10 max. But to do that day in, day out without reading, writing, external stimuli, talking, it is just an experience of really going inward. And stuff comes up. Stuff comes up. I will share that going into this retreat, I was super nervous, super scared. It wasn't as scary as I thought in some ways, but it also wasn't, the outcome wasn't what I expected in terms of how I felt leaving. So I'm jumping around to the end, but it's almost like to tell the story of what happened in between. Leaving, I was surprised by how I didn't necessarily feel super relaxed. I felt a lot more present and a lot more aware. But in many ways, because of the extreme focus and isolation and reflection time, the retreat itself was quite hard, quite hard. I'll tell you already, if you're contemplating going to Costa Rica for your sound bowl healing as a alternative or going to Bali for a yoga retreat, you might find that to be a lot more physiologically relaxing than a retreat like this was, for me at least. Although by the end of it, I was very relaxed. My mind was a lot calmer and slowed down in some ways, but the end result was that I also became a lot more sensitive, a lot more open-hearted, and a lot more aware of what was going on. But anyway, that's a quick overview of the high-level experience. I will share that days 1 through 5 were really hard, and on day 5, I had what felt like a massive breakdown, and I'll dive into that in a sec. But in terms of the first couple of days, the silence in the context of being silent with others, even silent with the person with which you share a roommate, that was not that hard. It was a lot easier than I thought. It didn't feel as lonely, although towards the end of the retreat, I did experience a lot of feelings of loneliness, of just like the feeling of really being with myself and feeling almost like a sad loss of perhaps the identities that I've identified with. But being in silence with a group of other people who were also practicing silence together, there was actually quite a bit of relief in that. I find that day to day, if we're on the street and we run into somebody, there's almost like a social obligation to stop and pause and acknowledge and talk to this other person and be present. And there was some relief in being with others without actually engaging and being with others. And there was quite a relief from that inner dialogue and that anxiety of what do I say or what are they thinking? None of that really existed because everybody was present in their own space. And so that was actually quite a relief. And so I went day 1 through 5, moving along, doing the meditations, doing the walking meditations. So 6:15 meditate until 7, breakfast, a little bit of a break, and then from 8:45 until 12, meditate, meditate, meditate. And I was moving along and the metta at first, the phrases were quite hard for me. I found myself getting easily distracted. I had a lot of physical pain in my body, but I I I also I also struggled with connecting the phrases to feelings. But the thing that really started to shift for me was on day 4. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So actually, sorry, day 5. On day 5, we were introduced to a concept called radiating metta, which is more into the felt sense of the metta or the loving kindness and sharing it out with others. So radiating out from our body to other bodies. I was almost imagining like an inner heart aura that was expanding to other beings. And I really connected with that. I was able to connect so deeply with the sensation of loving kindness and of the metta. And it became much easier for me to connect between the phrases and the radiating metta, but the radiating metta was much easier for me. And so all of my meditations from Tuesday through to end of day Wednesday were really focused on this radiating sensation that felt so good and so blissful. And the tingling from within my heart was so present, and the loving kindness was so great. And on Wednesday night, I found myself in a meditation where I was struggling to think the phrases and feel the feelings. And so switched into radiating metta and truly just leaning into the sensation. And I surrendered the phrases and I surrendered the focus as well. And I just felt radiating metta for the beings in the room, for myself, and the sensation of almost like our metta merging. And this was a beautiful, beautiful sensation. I felt warm, I felt tingling, I felt almost like my pores were opening up with heat from within my body. And I was physically getting so much warmer. And it was really enjoyable while it was happening. My thoughts were passing, but I wasn't latching onto them. And I felt so deeply connected with all the beings in the room. And shortly thereafter, I don't know how long this lasted. I think it could have been about like maybe 15 minutes. I have no idea. It felt like an eternity for me. There was a thought that came into my mind, which is if I keep going like this, I am going to disintegrate and I will lose my mind. And that snapped me out of it. And immediately I was like, okay, I'm not going there. And I brought myself back down to the room. I opened my eyes and I was warm and flushed all over, super, super warm. And the sensation of heat and the sensation of the tingling and the radiation that I still felt like coming out of my pores almost, it straight up triggered a panic attack. Not what I had at all expected on a meditation retreat, not something that I was looking forward to or anticipating whatsoever. Zach, my husband, and Hank, Zach's cousin, who's also a huge meditator, we've talked about this concept of feeling like we're starting to lose touch with reality. And I had never experienced that before. Like, I had experienced states where I was so present to the sensations in my body that I lost track of time or I felt like I really lingered in that, but I've never had the acute experience of feeling like I was in another state. And in that moment, I think the combination of the physical sensations, the heat, and then that extreme state of what felt like bliss and relaxation, but also very different, just completely spiraled me into I am losing my mind. So after the meditation, I'm trying to breathe my way back to calm. I'm still overheating. My heart starts pounding. And we're shifting into a Dharma talk at this point. This is in the evening. And I started to feel extremely disassociated. Like I'm in this room, but this is all a dream. And I should also mention that because of the repetition of my wake and sleep cycles, on the prior nights where every day I would wake up at the same time, turn off my alarm, take out my earplugs, yada, yada, yada. There started to be what felt like a merging of realities where I would sometimes dream that I would wake up, take off out my earplugs, turn off my alarm, but it turns out that was a dream, but in reality, I also physically took out my earplugs and I would later wake up thinking that I had woken up already, but I hadn't and I had been sleeping. And so there was just this weird merging of realities that had started to happen. My dreams were also extremely vivid during this time. And so that combined with what just happened really triggered anxiety for me in that Dharma talk and panic. I ended up leaving the room, going outside to cool down. And it was so cold outside, and my body was so hot that I went from extreme heat to extreme cold. And now I was shaking, shivering, but I still felt very warm. And the panic just really overtook me. I was doing my best to like breathe through it. Nobody follows you outside of the room when you're in this situation because everyone is participating in the talk. Everyone is silent. Everyone's having their own experience. And I was out there in the hallway coming back from being outside, just doing circles, taking sips of water, feeling still very shaky, feeling like I had tapped into something in my body that was too much, feeling like the fears that were coming up, like I was that enlightenment or nirvana meant losing my mind, that I would never see Zach again and be normal, like that I was in another dimension. Like all these thoughts were just racing through my mind. It was really scary. I was really scared. And it was in that moment that I decided, you know what? I'm leaving. Like I can't be here. I need Zach to come pick me up. Luckily, Spirit Rock is only 45 minutes away from my house. And I decided to run back to the dorms. Like all my stuff was in the room, but I decided to run back to the dorms and to find my phone, to turn it on, and to call Zach. And as I ran over to the dorms, I had this split moment of remembering that there was this emergency line that we could call if we were having a mental or physical experience for which we needed help. And so I go into the dorm and I'm like, okay, before I call Zach to come rescue me and make sure that there's another real person on the other side of the line, I'm going to stop and dial this number. So I pick up the phone, I find the phone in the dorm, I pick it up and I start dialing the number and the phone's not working. You can imagine in this situation where I feel like my realities are blending. I have this fear of losing my mind, that I feel like I'm in a dream, but it's really reality. Is this reality or is my dream reality? Right. That was so unnerving. I mean, the fear and panic in that moment. But the act of having to problem solve to figure out how to get this phone to work actually gave me a moment of reprieve where I felt more connected to, okay, I'm in reality, I'm problem solving, I'm thinking, I'm pressing these buttons. And it occurred to me that at this point, there could be another phone in the office. And so the problem solving aspect of my mind almost brought me back to earth for a moment. So I started to feel a bit better, but I was still extremely freaked out. I was still feeling the tingling sensation, which I now know is also just related to a sense of awareness. So I will this tingling sensation, some of you who might have ever gotten acupuncture might relate to the sensation of almost like chi in your body. That is what it feels like. That is what it felt like for me. It's actually a very common sensation I now know in meditation, but because it was lingering, because I was feeling this panic, the sensations were triggering the panic and it was just spiraling me a bit. So I ran to the next building, ran outside again in the cold. Now I had a blanket on me to the next building. I dialed the emergency number from the office. It goes to voicemail the first time. And they say to either leave a voicemail or call back. And I call back and somebody picks up. Whew. Let me tell you, the moment that I heard that other human's voice on the line, I started bawling, just bawling. The relief. I think I just felt so much relief, like that there's another person that's having this experience with me. I'm not alone. There's a real human. This is real. I've never felt, I just felt so deeply relieved. And the coordinator came to talk to me. I ended up talking to the teacher who basically helped explain that the experience that I was having was actually quite normal. Not the panic, actually, but the experience, the physical sensation of metta, of radiating metta, that there are some methods of meditation even that might raise your temperature in certain states, and that these altered states may be visual, may it be sensory, are common for some people, and it's just an energetic state. It doesn't last, and that the panic associated around it is really the thing that I should explore working with. And so from that night on, the next 24, 48 hours were quite difficult for me because every time I would start to fall asleep or start to meditate, I would start to feel that panic, that fear come on because the sensations in my body felt so present for me. But in a way, as I reflect on it now, it was also such a gift because I was able to work with the sensations of panic, work with the feeling of panic, breathe through the panic, have compassion for the part of me that felt anxiety and panic. And this is a skill that I am now bringing into my life outside of retreat. In that moment, I felt so scared. I felt so panicky. I wanted to run away. I wanted to leave. I was ready to leave. But through staying and through sitting with that and through going back and doing another meditation, just perhaps also spending more time balancing the focus and the sensation parts, I was able to work through the panic, which is just such an unbelievable gift. And also gave me such incredible insight into my own patterning in terms of when things happen that are uncomfortable for me that cause anxiety, my immediate reaction in many states is to get away, to leave the situation, to flee, right? If I feel too uncomfortable with what's going on in my life, I want to travel or just almost like disassociate for a bit, but I stuck with it and I was able to stick with it. And that was a really powerful gift for the rest of the week. And then also now coming out of the retreat, I think for the rest of my life. Now, I've spent some time since leaving the retreat reflecting on that experience with my therapist and also my meditation teacher. And I've gotten some additional clarity around the experience itself, which also the kind of fear of losing my identity, losing my mind in that meditation I've learned since then is actually also very tied to ego disillusionment and having those brief snippets that I had of what it feels like to be one with the essence of others and almost like one with the universal consciousness in a way. That expansive feeling can also feel very threatening to the ego, which is what I think came up and also why my reaction was one of the more severe ones in terms of my ego, my mind threw at me the biggest fears it could, which is the losing my mind, losing my identity fear. But I was able to work with it. And it was really, really powerful. the rest of the retreat was nowhere as eventful, but I will share that since from that point on, I was able to tap into so much more awareness and open-heartedness with the freedom of also being able to trust that I could work through the difficult experiences that came up. So that was probably the most significant experience that I had on the retreat. I will share that starting to talk again with others was also unexpectedly emotional. I found myself tearing up in describing something like a subtle memory of a experience in nature that I had while on the retreat when talking with another person. One of the prompts as we were starting to bring back speech towards the end of the retreat. And it was just so incredible to witness at the end of the retreat just how open-hearted I felt. When I came back home to see Zach, I burst into tears just because I loved and appreciated him so much. Something that is so true for me, something that I feel every single day, but I just felt such relief to see him on the retreat at times when I was sending him and my puppy Zoe loving kindness. I would tap into this fear of, oh my gosh, what if I don't get a chance to tell them how much I love them again? What if something were to happen? And I just really felt into that. And it really did offer just so much heart and compassion and love in my life. Just being able to tap into that sense of an open heart. And it was truly such a gift. I will share that on Thursday, so we left on Friday. On Thursday, I was so excited, excited to leave, so ready to go, and so over it. But as I reflect now, and even when I was leaving, I was like, okay, that was super hard. I cannot wait to go home. I cannot wait to see Zach. I cannot wait to be back in my routine, but I also cannot wait to sign up for the next one because it truly was life changing. And I cannot emphasize this enough that there were some profound lessons beyond the experience that I described that came through this deep reflection and being with myself and my thoughts. So, some of the other things that really stood out to me as I reflect on this retreat, I was able to notice just how constant my flow of thoughts was. I expected at some point that there would be a slowing of thoughts, and at times there were, but I was surprised by how many negative, judgmental thoughts would pop out of nowhere. Like literally nowhere, y'all. I would be sitting there eating my dinner, enjoying my chili or whatever it is that they serve. The food was quite good at Spirit Rock, by the way. And all of a sudden, I would have a judgmental thought about somebody who's like sitting across the way who walked by me, or I would have a complaint about the food, or I would have a judgment about myself, about how I was meditating or not meditating, or doing this or doing that, right? Just this constant stream of judgments. And when you take away the outside stimulation and you're in this situation where there's no TV, there's no news to blame my trigger on. There's no nothing. There's just this agency that comes forth, which is, whoa, these thoughts, they're just like appearing from thin air. They're not triggered by anything. And I'm just constantly doing this. I am constantly thinking. The brain is an organ. Our output are thoughts, amongst other things. But it was really enlightening because I realized that I had trained my brain to think this way. And it really gave me a window into the not just the state of my thoughts, but the kinds of thoughts that were on repeat. And a lot of them were on repeat. A lot of judgmental thoughts, self-judgmental thoughts, and complaints were on repeat. Things that were wrong, things that needed to be fixed. This internal restlessness was pretty constant. And so that was pretty eye-opening for me. And it really just made me reflect coming out of this retreat. What type of information do I want to be taking in? What type of training do I want to be giving my mind? Which kind of goes back to what I was talking about briefly earlier. When it comes to social media, I feel like social media is the ultimate training in distraction. I pick it up when I'm feeling restless or bored, right? Instead of sitting with the uncomfortable feeling, I pick it up. I get a dopamine hit. I scroll through. It's inherent that some aspect of comparison comes up, right? Comparison or just consumption of information, the knowing about other people's lives, the comparing, the judgment, good or bad, whether it be, oh, she's more beautiful than me. I appreciate that in her, or the judgment around something like that. I just felt this very clear view come in of how social media for me was really impacting my life and also fostering this mental state of distraction. The images just come through, the videos come through, they're constant, never ending, there's no pause. It's so easy to get lost in there. So that was really, really clear to me. And also the action that I want to take from that in terms of continuing really this hiatus, this break from social. We as a podcast will continue to post on social media twice a week, but I'm launching a Substack. I'm looking into other means of connecting with people, including in-person events for Inflow. We're doing them all around the Bay. We're doing them with also large corporations, some of the Fortune 500 companies here. And so how can I don't want to say we, but how can I foster other means of connection that feel more aligned with my values and that cultivate the kind of mind that I want to have day to day is such a core exploration and theme for me as I go into this next year, really. The last thing I want to mention is the reflection that I had around really witnessing Buddhism as a path to freedom. I think I shared in the past, or maybe even earlier in this episode, I don't even remember because this is a stream of consciousness, that I have always felt a bit of resistance to Buddhism in that I felt like it was really at odds with my ambitious side, where, well, I'm pretty aspirational. There are things that I want. There are things that I want to work towards. And sometimes I felt like not focusing on them all the time would in some way make me unable to attain them, or it would take away from that ambition in a way. But I realized through this practice of loving kindness and through this practice of really cultivating mindfulness and focus in my life that the contentment that I feel, even in the midst of anxiety, because I had a lot of anxiety and reactivity. That's the other thing I want to mention. Metta is a practice that brings up all the shit. People are reactive during or they're reactive after as they integrate. And the awareness that we cultivate through meditation makes us more acutely attuned to what's happening. But that stuff comes out until it clears its way out. So just to be prepared for that. But in seeing some of the things that were released, and even in the context of negative emotions such as anxiety, I can still feel and see that there's potential for peace and contentment on the other side. There's just some aspect of really being able to feel part of a larger whole, to feel contentment, to feel more love for others through this practice, through these practices. I can see that that is a possibility for me right now. And that is why when I was leaving, I am just so ready and so eager to sign up for the next one. I'm going to do it in the fall. Actually, I'm going to Tassajara with Zach over the summer. We're going to be doing a retreat, but it's not going to be a silent retreat. It's more of like a vacation, hot springs and stuff like that. But in the fall, I would love to do like a 7 to 10 day or more insight meditation because it was just a really powerful, powerful perspective shifter for me, this experience. So, with that being said, that is the TLDR of my silent retreat. Hopefully, that was helpful and interesting for you all. If you ever want to reach out and talk about meditation or any of that stuff with me, please reach out. Happy to talk about with anyone. And I just want to circle back to share the themes for this season because this experience plus this past year have obviously shifted some of my areas that I'm curious about And I'm excited to dive into some of these things in the next couple of months. So here's a bit of what you can expect on the other way this winter spring 2025 season. So we're going to be definitely continuing with the kind of feminine themes that we've been cultivating on past episodes, everything from fertility, spiritual fertility, the anatomy of desire. We're going to be speaking with some guests that are really curating and cultivating community for women and why that's important, the importance of sisterhood, how to tap into that, herbalism, and also exploring feminine practices in East Asian medicine. So that's definitely going to continue to be a theme for this season. But also, we're going to be bringing in some of the principles of Buddhism. I want to look at it from the lens of the sacred feminine as well. So I have some guests that I'm hoping to book that will be covering the sacred feminine and Buddhism. I would love to explore Taoism and Buddhism since I have that passion for Chinese medicine and Taoist philosophy. Like I would love to dive deeper into that. We're going to also explore these Eastern concepts of psychology translated to a Western lens in the form of ACT or acceptance and commitment therapy, and how that can be a means to freedom for our minds and freedom from anxiety. And then we're going to be exploring some things around Qigong, the nature of enlightenment, and of course, metta and loving kindness. So, those are some of the core themes that you can look out for. I hope you're as excited as I am, to have some of these conversations and tune in. I'm always open to your suggestions, so don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me on Instagram. All the links are in the show notes. And then the last thing I want to mention is in celebration of The Other Way publishing more than 100 episodes, we are doing a very special giveaway, which is going to be going on from now until March 11th. And we are going to be giving out a $100 gift card for a very special listener who could be you, perhaps. And it's super easy to enter. You just have to subscribe to The Other Way on Spotify or Apple if you haven't already, and then leave us a review and send a screenshot of the review to assistant@inflowplanner.com. So again, that's assistant at inflowplanner.com. And all the information, again, is in the show notes. And so, yeah, one of my intentions for the podcast in 2025 is to just really continue to grow our reach. We are continuing to grow month over month, but as you probably know, your reviews make a world of difference. Leaving a review really does help other people find us. And for every review, so if you review one on Spotify and Apple, you'll be submitted twice, which is a win-win situation. Go ahead and do that. Send me your emails. And yeah, looking forward to an incredible season. Thank you for tuning in. And let's jump into all of these amazing conversations. All right. See you next time, probably in a month, for another solo episode. And that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning into The Other Way. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review. It really helps the podcast grow, and I'm ever so grateful. If you want to stay connected, you can find information on how in our show notes. And finally, if you're curious about inflow and want free resources around cyclical living or moon cycles, check out inflowplanner.com. And of course, for all my listeners, you can use the code podcast10 for 10% off any purchase. All right, that's all for today. See you next time.